Do you guys think that the Division is going to live up to the hype? It comes out the day you're listening to this, Tuesday, March 8th, and you know it's going to be the direct competitor to Destiny. It's essentially fighting for that player share, right? It's an open world game where it's mission based and it's an RPG, but it's set in more so current day post apocalyptic as opposed to future sci-fi, right? Do you think this game will succeed? Before we get into that, I just want to say that I played the alpha and the beta, so I have a little bit of experience with it. I'm not too sure if you guys have, but once we get into our thoughts on that, we'll figure out if you guys have played it or what your guys' thoughts on it are. So, shooting to you first, Dom, what do you think? Will the Division live up to the hype that Ubisoft is putting on this game?
So I think it. I mean, I think it definitely has the potential to. So I missed both the alpha and the beta, so I have no hands-on experience at all. I mean, I've watched a couple of let's plays of the beta and things like that. But yeah, I think it looks really interesting. Personally, it's not for me. I'm not big into the multiplayer games nowadays, but I could imagine, with a group of friends, this could be a big time sink for a lot of people, which is exactly like you said, the kind of crowd that was into Destiny. So, and I'm sure that they're looking at what Destiny did right and wrong, and learning from that and trying not to make the same mistakes. Kind of a lack of content or a lack of story. So I'm sure they'll try to, course correct based on what Destiny did, and I think this has huge potential to be pretty big. Again, no hands-on experience for me myself, but I think it looks very interesting.
Jordan, what do you think?
So I got into the alpha last winter, but I missed it because that's when I got Bloodborne. And then I played the beta earlier in February for just a couple hours. So I like the game. It's a solid third-person shooter, and that's really like the basis that it needs, you know, to even start competing with Destiny. So it's got that going for it. It's got the loot game and the online multiplayer and connectivity type of thing going. And I think it's going to sell millions of copies, and it's going to have a following, and I think people are going to still be playing it later on this year, like around Game of the Year talks. I don't think it's going to be an Evolve situation. But, what we were talking about earlier with the marketing and little things like that can really turn the tide to whether it's like we saw with Destiny, whether it was a 7.0 or a 9.0, there were very small little things that made that difference. So I hope the best for the Division, because I want more of these like hybrid MMOs that you don't really have to sink 100 hours in just to get good at.
Yeah. And
I do like the setting a lot. The post-apocalyptic Manhattan and Christmas around Black Friday. But it's definitely like a wait-and-see approach for me. I'm not going to be getting it day one, mainly just because I'm not like a huge multiplayer gamer, and so I'd probably wait until it was like $30 or so. But
yeah,
I think it's got, like I said, it has that basis of the strong third-person shooting aspect and the loot game. So there's definitely potential there.
I think, the big concern is longevity, right? Because this is a game that's going to be a platform as opposed to like a single game release. It's going to be supported. That was the big thing with Destiny, is that it was a release and then it was supported with substantial quote unquote DLC afterwards. Personally, I sunk way too many hours into Destiny, more than I want to admit. But you'd think if you put that much time into a game, you would appreciate it. But looking back on it, I really don't appreciate the time I spent with Destiny. It's kind of like, when you see a book and you read the cover and the cover's really good, and you read, maybe the prologue and the prologue's good, but as you start to read the actual book, you realize that there's nothing there,
Yeah.
For me, it seemed like there was so much in this world, but nothing was there, It was just the same thing over and over again, and some people love that. That's why they compare it to an MMO. I don't like MMOs. I don't like grinding the same thing over and over again. That's not the type of gamer I am. To the people who love that, great. That's definitely your thing. But to me, it that's definitely not my thing. And the impression I got from Destiny, the Division rather, is that it's in the same basis of Destiny, but I believe that there's a lot more content there. From the alpha and the beta that I both played, it seems like there's a lot more content there. There's going to be some retracing of footsteps, but because of the environment, it takes place in one city and there's so many buildings, who's to say that later on down the line with updates, they don't unlock certain buildings that you couldn't access before? Because that's what it felt like. When you play a game And there's areas you can obviously access, and there's areas you can't, where it's like either the color isn't there or the detail on that certain object isn't there.
Yeah.
For this whole entire game, almost every door you go to is the same. It's hard to tell which doors are accessible besides getting the button prompt. So it feels like maybe they are shells right now, certain areas, but they can actually invest more content into that area. So even though you're tracking down the quest lines through the same, intersection of streets, there's going to be a lot of content there because you can take things a different way. There's certain apartments that open up, there's certain things going on. It all depends on how Ubisoft handles the situation. I think the longevity is a big concern here. Also, it seems like that's what they're buying for. They're not doing Assassin's Creed this year because they want to focus on Assassin's Creed, but I think also as a part of that, they want to focus on the Division. They want to make sure Assassin's Creed gets back to being the type of game people want to play, but they want to put all of their eggs into this basket, because if they get the Division to hit, you see the money that Destiny's pulling in. They want that money, and I think that the longevity is a big thing here. Dom, do you feel that the move with the Division correlates, right with them not doing an Assassin's Creed game this year? You think those two are one and the same?
Yeah, absolutely. But more than that, I think Watch Dogs 2 is going to take definitely take the place of their Assassin's Creed, right? So I think we're all assuming at E3 Watch Dogs 2 will be announced, and hopefully, it seems ideal that they're going to release that in the fall.
But will it sell though?
Yeah, it's tough. So I completely skipped the first Watch Dogs, but
everyone did.
Right. From what I've heard, though, given the few improvements, it has potential to be really great, too. So, I'm sure that if they market it the right way and push it as hard as I expect them to, it should do well in the fall. But there's a lot of cool stuff coming out in the fall, too, though. So, we'll see.
Jordan, you have any comments about this?
Yeah, I think it does seem obvious that they're doing Watch Dogs this fall, and we'll see how that goes. But as far as the Division, I think... a lot of people obviously even us are comparing this to Destiny, and I get that. They're very similar games. But Destiny may end up hurting Watch Dogs, because I think a lot of people could say, well, they're very similar games, and, the beta to me seemed pretty empty.
You mean the Division, right? You said Watch Dogs, but I believe you meant the Division?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, comparing Watch Dogs and the Division, the beta for Division seemed a little bit empty to me, like what you were talking about with the shell buildings and all that you couldn't go into. And I do think people are going to kind of sit back and wait and see if the Division has a substantial amount of content. If not, I think they might just say, well, why don't I just wait for the Division Taken King 2.0,
Yeah.
Like, why don't I just wait until they actually make this a full game? Because I played Destiny for about 15 to 20 hours, Destiny when it first came out, and it was great for about 10 or 15 hours, and then it was just boring as crap, because you're playing the same, 4 or 5 missions on the same 2 or 3 planets, or you just do the Crucible, and if that's how the Division is, I think that could really hurt it. So
I think we'll
have to see what kind of content they have.
Yeah, especially Bungie is known for Halo, and your concerns with the later Halo games and their stories is irrelevant with this. The early Halo games were great story-driven games. There was the shooting mechanics, but they were great stories. And it's sad to see a company like Bungie, who you expect them to have a solid story when they come out with Destiny, and they build all this lore, but there's nothing there. They totally got Activisioned, Totally got Activision.
Yeah, it was very bizarre. Yeah, they almost totally omitted the story in that game. Yeah, that was a letdown for sure.